And we are back, folks, for another edition of the Michigan Basketball Insider. Season's over, but the season that prepares you for the season is far from it. Yes, the Wolverines have been doing portal work. And shout out to Dusty May, by the way, who participated in the Michigan Softball Academy. And not only had he been out recruiting the portal, he had been out swinging the bat. And Dusty went and hit 3 home runs in the softball academy yesterday, and I told him I would shout him out because Jim Harbaugh hit 0. I said, Dusty, all you got to do is beat Jim. And he did that in his first 2 at-bats. He got 1 out of the park. So now he's decent. Now I might as well win the thing. He wound up coming in second place. The winner hit 5. Dusty hit 3 home runs out of the park. So Dusty May representing on the softball side of things for making strides against breast cancer, but also representing very well when it comes to the Michigan basketball program, as did my esteemed guest and friend. He roamed the center court for Clarkston High School as an All-American before going on to the University of Michigan and becoming an All-American there. First-round draft pick back in 1984. 10 years in the National Basketball Association, where he went on to from there become one of the best basketball commentators in the land, still doing it on Pistons broadcasts. The Pistons are in the playoffs. And, of course, college basketball broadcasts as well. My man, Tim McCormick. I could call him my big fella, Timmy Mack. But you know him as Tim McCormick. Tim, how you doing?
I'm good. I never hit a home run, Sam. Much respect to Dusty May. Pretty impressive. I bet Juwan Howard didn't either.
No, I don't think Juwan ever made it out to the softball academy. But Dusty, they recruited Dusty. Dusty, I think he thought he was going to be like a judge or something. And then Bonnie Thole, being the recruiter she is, said, why don't you go pick up a bat? And then Dusty, he's a competitor. So you challenge him, and because he lost. He couldn't settle for, he hit 3 home runs. He's like, I got to come back next year so I can win it. So that's all he could talk about.
Go into training. I like it. Well, the dust has settled a little bit, Sam. Did you catch your breath? You ready to talk some hoops?
I'm ready to talk some hoops, man. And we kind of teased it. I don't know if it was on the last episode or the episode before, but I said we were talking about the guys that they got. And we started talking about the guys they still have feelers out for. And I said, Tim, UCLA's Aday Mara, what do you think about the potential addition of this big 7'2", 7'3", seeming to scratch the surface of what he could be, big fella? And you said he's a Zach Edey type. How would he fit? And now, Tim, that becomes a more purposeful, more functional question, because Dusty May, and what we had become privy to, has actually gotten a commitment from him, and he's going to be in the one of the portal additions for the Wolverines.
Pretty exciting. This team is going to be really talented and deep at some positions. The ability to evaluate Michigan's roster now is both promising and uncertain. I think it's so difficult to break down and project the future of so many players that are either not proven or just haven't watched enough. I think it's easy to pop in a highlight reel and watch a player and try to evaluate them. But the truth is, Sam, I've watched hundreds of films on players. I've never seen in a highlight video anybody miss a shot. 100% from the field. No turnovers, right. No blown defensive assignments. It's all fun. And my first thought before we talk about Aday Mara is that when I walked away from Michigan getting beat by Auburn, the guards for Michigan were exploited, and it's a guards game nowadays. And so I also want to talk about LJ Cason, because I think he's going to be really important. And I do think that Michigan still needs a backup point guard. So we can get into that, but
Mhm.
Aday Mara is going to be fun. He's not as good as Vlad Golden, but he could be. And I like a lot about him. I saw him play several times at UCLA. He had the huge game against Wisconsin, which was really impressive. That's a test of your manhood. But what I like best about him is he's 7'3" and he's a sophomore, and he's got really nice moves. He's got some up and under. He's got a little jump hook. I don't think he's Zach Edey yet, but he might be Zach Edey as a freshman or sophomore. I'm not projecting him as an NBA player, but I think he could really become a good college player. Last year, he only averaged 6 points per game, but I like him on the team. I think it'll be a big opportunity for Michigan to get him in better shape. It looked like he got tired pretty quick. Mick Cronin, tough coach, not very likable. And so Dusty May can be a perfect motivator for somebody like that. But if you've got good hands and good feet and you're a big guy, I'm going to give you every chance because they don't come around, especially at 7'3".
Yeah, no doubt. You mentioned Zach Edey. I mean, we see the size profile, but if you can kind of get into your rationale, your reasons when you kind of line them up side by side. I mean, what Edey like does he do? Does he have sort of a refined sort of go to back to the basket? I mean, what do you see in him that draws the Edey comparison?
Well, I like a guy that's so big and strong that he can keep the ball chest and higher. You know, you're catching the ball here, you get your elbows out there. Zach Edey and Aday Mara can both catch, keep it high, and dunk on people. Vlad Golden could do that too. And so I think a lot of the recruiting process that Dusty May went through, he sent a bunch of clips of Zach Golden and how that he screens and flashes to the ball. How Elliot Cadeau is very good at driving and dishing, and the fact that there's a promise there that you're going to get an opportunity to play in a player-friendly system, and I'm going to make you better. And so there's a lot to like with him. He also seems like the right kid. He's funny. He's got a kind heart. He's the kind of guy that you like to walk into a locker room and see him and say hi. And I think he's going to be a really good addition. I don't think he'll be the starting center. I think Morez Johnson will. I think Morez Johnson will play 25 minutes a game, and Aday will play 15.
Yeah, it was interesting because one of the things that was sort of brought up in his departure from UCLA is he wasn't terribly happy with his role and usage. He showed glimpses of where UCLA fans are like, man, this guy, wow, he's a terrific passer. I mean, he can pivot and dunk on someone. He has a hook shot, and it was always flashes. I think he had a high against career high against Wisconsin, where he went for like 21 or so points, 21, 22 points. But it was one of those things where they didn't see the promise turned into sustained success. So it felt like it was on the horizon, but they never got to really realize what he could truly become. Like you said he's not as good as Vlad yet, but he could be. And that was why it seemed like, at least from some of the UCLA faithful, there was some disappointment that he left. And then there was some talk that he made some outrageous demands on his way out the door. And then he was quick to kind of say, hey, wait, whoa. It was not that kind of party. No, don't. I'm just trying to go someplace that fits me better, that I think is going to maybe utilize me. I'm paraphrasing, that I feel is like going to be a better environment for me. And why wouldn't you feel like that if you're him and you look at what Michigan just did with 2 7-footers and maybe one that has a style that's kind of like you with high usage in Vlad Gold? Why wouldn't you feel like that?
You're looking at one of the hardest eras to play basketball and to coach basketball. This is a big boy time, and you can't worry about hurting anybody's feelings. And when you have potentially a transformational type talent, and I'm not saying that he's transformational where they're going to win the Big Ten because he's on the team. I'm saying that he's somebody that can become a game changer. He can become like an all conference type of player. And he's got so far to go. I'm reluctant to even say that. However, there's not a lot of 7'3", 255-pound guys out there. And if he has been just scratching at the surface, and I love the fact that they didn't want him to leave, they could see his potential. This is a guy that you can run your offense through from time to time. It's going to be different. It's going to be a lot more of Hunter Dickinson and Moussa Diabate, going block to block and really clogging the lane some. But when Morez Johnson's in the game, that changes. So I think you can get away with it. Also, they're really going to need to have a Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer type of combination. If you're going to have big guys, you've got to have court spacers. And maybe that's my biggest concern about this team, Sam. Who's going to make jump shots? I don't have confidence in Roddy Gale. I don't think he has confidence in himself right now. Namari Burnett, he was a little bit erratic this year. I like his 3-and-D ability, but he's got to get a little bit more confident if he's a court spacer. Trey McKinney is going to be a freshman. He's a good shooter. So it's Winter's great. He's also a really good shooter. He's a freshman. Who's going to make shots and spread the court for these guys? That's a big question.
Yeah. So just to set the record straight on Aday Mara, just to speak up for him just a little bit, he said that and this was in his interview with the Los Angeles Times, because he made it a point to get out there and say he never made any outrageous demands to the program about more money, that he never made any outrageous demands that he would have travel whenever he wanted to Spain or anything like that. It was nothing along those lines. It was just a matter of opportunity, that he was working hard. He felt like he was training hard, trying his best. And he felt like that until that Wisconsin game where we talked about him having that breakout where it was like, I think it was 22 points he had in that contest. He just felt like he didn't really get the opportunity that he thought he was going to get. And then moving forward, in order to ensure that he was going to get that opportunity, he felt like he needed to change the scenery. Really, that's what it boils down to. He loved his experience at UCLA and feels like he's going to have a better chance of having the kind of experience he wants at Michigan. So,
and Sam, someday he is going to be a wealthy man. There's a lot of motivation for 7'2", 255-pound guys, because he can make $1 million a year overseas somewhere. Like he's going to play for a long time. And when guys have that ability, knowing that there's a livelihood, he's going to work really hard on his body, his conditioning, and his skill set. So motivated players get better.
So you kind of alluded to this a bit. Can they play? They found out that they could play Vlad and Danny together. You remember how big a question that was? Can these two play together? We were like, we don't know, maybe so. It's a much bigger question with these two, because there just doesn't seem to be on paper skill sets that are complementary. They seem to be skill sets that are more conflicting than complementary. At least with Danny, you saw some away from the basket skills that could fit. Whereas with Merez, he has a little bit of he can shoot a little bit away from the basket, but not much of a put it on the deck. Or do you see any room for them to play together, Tim?
No, I don't. Especially if Yaxel comes in. No, I mean, much respect to Morez Johnson. I've never seen him shoot a three. I mean, I could probably look at his stats, but every time I've seen Illinois, he's Musa Diabate, like super athlete, long, plays hard, fun to watch. But I would imagine that he and Musa are probably similar 3-point shooters. None.
Well, what Illinois fans would tell you, and you're right, none. But what they would tell you is that his mid-range shooting, which he would take a few mid-range shots, was probably a little too much for their liking, that he would feel like that was a better shot than it actually was. And maybe it will become a good shot for him at Michigan. I don't like to put a guy in a box. He didn't look broke. He just looked like maybe that's not a great shot if it's not a great shot in practice. That's what he looked like to me. But I mean, to me, that was all. He's a product of his. I don't want to get too broke off into Illinois, but he looked like it was a product of his environment. All those Illinois guys were shooting shots like that, just throwing it up.
Dusty May doesn't love threes. I mean, he loves threes and doesn't love mid-range. So I don't know the messaging that he's going to get about his mid-range shot, but I like guys that block shots and protect the rim, and they run the court and dunk on people in transition and keep offensive rebounds alive. Live body, great attitude, high energy. Those are guys I like, and that's what Morez Johnson brings.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned Yaxel Lendeborg, who is, if you're looking for a guy who brings you the skill set, the baseball would call it a 5-tool guy, right? Basketball, he can dribble, pass, and shoot. He can give you some back to the basket. He can play defense. They talked about blocking shots and rebounds. Like, this dude, he gives you all the things. So if you're looking for a complementary front court player that can play with both of those guys, Yaxel would seem to give you some of that. But the rub is, as Dusty well knew, we sat down and talked to him about it. He couldn't talk about Yaxel explicitly at the time, but he said, hey, if I'm going to recruit the best guys in the portal, and that's what I'm going to do, then I know I got to wait through this NBA thing. And I'll have some contingencies, but I'm not going to skimp on recruiting these guys. This is what I'm expected to do at the University of Michigan. And I'm going to have a plan if it doesn't work out. But this is the guy he went for. And so now, Tim, this is where we sit with a dude who is going to visit Michigan this weekend, but then you have to wait through whether or not the NBA is going to offer him that first round guarantee. And if the NBA does offer him that first round guarantee, then he's going to be out the door. So the question is, what are you hearing?
So Yaxel Lendeborg is a player that immediately makes you a Big Ten championship favorite. And I have talked to NBA scouts about him, and they're intrigued. I think intrigue is a good word to describe the situation. Sam, I'm reluctant to get excited about him. I think first round money guarantees dwarf NIL payments. I would imagine that on his visit this weekend to Ann Arbor, he's going to see a lot of Danny Wolf video. And what they're going to do is they're going to say, look, we took Danny Wolf as a fringe second round pick, and we made him a lottery pick. When you go to the NBA, you want to be prepared. If not, you're going to spend a lot of time on buses going around the G League, and it's not an easy existence. He also will benefit from playing in Mackey Arena and the Kohl Center and Assembly Hall and the Breslin, as opposed to road trips to East Carolina and Tulane and Rice. Like playing big boy competition is really going to help prepare him a great deal. That will be brought up as well. Look, he's an NBA prospect. I don't think there's any doubt. When he gets to the NBA, I could see him doing some Danny Wolf stuff. His resume is impressive. I've not watched him much at UAB, but I will say this: if you're 6'9", You can shoot the ball. You can run the court. You can pass it. I think that Dusty looks at him and says, I really think you're worth chasing. We're going to pay you a lot of money, maybe not quite as much as the NBA, but we're going to pay you very well. And we are going to do a great job of preparing you for the NBA. And Sam, the other thing that's important to note is, yeah, he's going to the draft combine. And so you won't really get a final answer until May 28th. But what also happens on May 28th, there are some really good players out there that think they're NBA guys, and they're going to get told otherwise by the NBA scouts. And they're going to say, I need to go back to college. I don't know where to go. Is there any NIL money out there? And there's Dusty May with big check. And so I think they'll be okay. This team is nowhere near set, I don't believe.
So Dusty made it very clear where they are in terms of competing with the NBA. Because I asked him a very pointed question. I said, when you got here, you wanted to be more competitive with the top teams in college basketball in the NIL space. Clearly, you've achieved that. But where are you when it comes to competing with the NBA, when it comes to maybe keeping a guy like Danny Wolf, for instance? And he said, well, here's the brass tacks. We aren't beating the NBA for guys who are going to get first round money. That's not happening. We're beating them for second round picks. We're beating second round money, which is impressive. I was like, wow. It's like, okay. Like, yeah, second round contract, we got that. Right. So, and why wouldn't a guy come and, get this second round money, work your way into a first round pick if you can, right? So if that winds up being Yaxel, this is a great move. You get a chance to get nurtured in this environment, get that NIL money for a year, and then reset and probably be a first round pick next year, ideally, if it works out that way, because you look at what happened with Danny and the plan they put in place for him. And boy, I mean, the versatility that Danny showed, again, you don't want to take for granted that it would translate as well for Yaxel. But I just kind of feel like, I don't know that Yaxel would rebound it as well, but I just feel like a lot of the things putting in, I'm just excited. I'm excited about the possibilities of what
I would be shocked, Sam. I would be shocked, but I'm rooting for it to happen. And the other point I want to make is it's really hard to get to the NBA. It's hard to stay there. And there's a lot of really, really good college basketball players that aren't just quite NBA guys. Like they lack one thing in their game. Other than that, they can dominate the college level. Think about Eli Brooks and Muhammad Ali Abdul-Rahman and Graham Brown and Deshaun Sims. I mean, you can go all through Richard Relford. I mean, there's every year there's somebody that wasn't quite good enough to get to the NBA, but you could bring them and win Big Ten championships. And so that's the fallback position. And I think it's a pretty good one to have.
It is. And so we'll obviously be keeping track of things. And I think you described it. I mean, this can be part of his, just like Dusty has contingency plans, right, in place for Yaxel. He's very pointed. So I'm going to recruit these guys because this is the University of Michigan. Yaxel has to, you're working this angle too. Hey, Michigan might be the plan. You work this NBA plan. If it doesn't work out, you want to make sure that Michigan is as great an option as it could possibly be. You get here, you meet the guys and all of that, be around the coaches, all of that. So that's part and parcel with actually running the race, go on a visit, see what you would actually be getting into, right? So as much as we would like to believe this visit means it's more likely that he comes, I think we would probably be reading a little too much into things if we did that, right?
I can tell how excited you are about Yaxel. So I'm just curious. I want to hear your starting lineup next year if Yaxel is your four-man. This is going to be so fun for you. You're going to be so happy.
So
You're going to love this lineup.
So Yaxel and Merez up front. Roddy, Namari, LJ. Not LJ, but Elliot Cadeau.
And then you got LJ as your sixth man.
LJ is my sixth.
That lineup right there, right at the top of the Big Ten. Purdue's going to be good again, but man, that would be a good lineup.
Yeah, the only thing that might alter it is if I feel like I want to. That's probably how I would go, though. I mean, there's some question I would have with Roddy about how did you feel being the sixth man? Because he seemed to find a groove. He seemed to find a groove in that role. And I would want to explore if he felt like that was part of something that he felt like he could replicate. If he felt like that was something that was part of getting his game off, because that's going to be an important role next year. You're going to need some punch off the bench. And, is that going to be LJ? Be good to know what you had. I don't know if that's going to be LJ. Based on what you saw from Roddy, that he can give you some of that. So I would explore whether or not what that would look like. But LJ give you some point guard ability off the bench. He give you some scoring off the bench, and got a chance to, speaking specifically of LJ, some news. USA Basketball Junior National Team he's going to be playing with. Talked to Dusty here. He said just in the time between the being put out of the tournament and they're away for I think maybe a couple of weeks, and then they saw him again. He said he looked like he had gotten bigger and had improved. It just seemed like just growth mentally and physically in that amount of time. And it was kind of a metaphor, Tim, for the kind of growth that you see from a guy year one and year two. They just seem to grow exponentially in that window. And so he's expecting a big jump from LJ in a number of categories over this summer. So if that's the case, then next year could be a big year for LJ Cason.
Yeah, LJ gets me excited. He has a great upside. We were talking before we started here about the Toledo game. I was there. That was an exhibition game. It didn't count. But he had 20 points. He made all of his threes. And I think that he can be an all-league type player. Why not? He's got athleticism, a big-time swagger. He's got three-point range, even though it didn't really impress us this year. I predict he will lead Michigan in shots taken this summer. That's going to be very important for him. And when I watch him play, I think back to Jaden Ivey of the Detroit Pistons when he was at Purdue. Ivey's a little bit bigger, but they both have that swagger and that energy. And one step further, you're right. You improve a lot from your freshman to your sophomore year, but you know who else improves? Players that realize that they get a lot of open shots, and if they can't make them, they get frustrated, and the opponent is able to cover them easy. I think that Roddy Gale and Amari Burnett both experienced that in January and February, where they had a chance to get all league recognition if they just made their shots, right? If they just shot 35 to 40%, if they were consistent and they knew that they could knock those shots down, their scoring average would each jump by 5 or 6 points per game. And that's the difference between universal respect around the league and coaches saying, yeah, he can't shoot, leave him alone. So those two, out of necessity, are going to spend a ton of time working on their shots. I think they'll both be better next year.
Yeah, I asked Dusty a pretty pointed question about LJ Cason. I mean, you saw the game where probably that exhibition game was, I'm assuming, his best shooting game of the year. It didn't count, unfortunately. Right, he was 4 for 4 from 3-point range, as you pointed out. But he had warm-ups, for instance, where he had different guys who watch warm-ups religiously, like lights out of warm-ups, and it's just not translating to games. Dusty said he, in practice even, he shoots the ball a lot better, and whether it's feeling rushed or it's just a freshman thing or getting into the flow of the game or whatever, it just was one of those things where it's in there, but you feel like maybe it's one of those deals where from year 1 to year 2, the comfort in his role, the comfort with the speed of the game, the comfort with what's being asked of him on both ends of the floor, that he is going to shoot it better. They're expecting him to take the lead because his form is good. Like he does all the things. So look for him to shoot the basketball better. His shot is not broken and he works on it. So I'm expecting him to do those things. So
makes sense. I've got another question for you, Sam. You did so well in the first one. I've got a second one. It's about the point guard position. Elliot Cadeau is your 30-minute per game point guard. Is that number higher or lower? And I've got a bunch of point guard questions, so it's not the last one.
Elliot Cadeau, a 30-minute per game guy. That's about where Trey was, wasn't it? Well, how many minutes did Trey average last year?
I think it might be a little bit lower than that.
Might be a little bit lower. So it's interesting, and this gets into something that I was thinking about as you asked me my starting lineup, because my temptation would be to start LJ. Temptation would be to start LJ and make Roddy my sixth man, hoping that
Roddy really make him be sixth man of the year, like really talk it up.
Yes, really make him embrace that.
Okay.
Provided I felt like LJ progresses enough in the offseason to warrant ascension into a starting role. Right. And I think he can do that. Now, what it takes away is who's your ideal guy as your backup point guard now. Who assumes that duties is just a matter of you managing the minutes between the two, and Elliot Cadeau goes out and LJ slides over. Like, how are you managing that situation moving forward? And are you incorporating, freshman participation in it? I think, he's not a point guard by trade anywhere close to the imagination. I'm not calling him a one at all, but is he serviceable in the role to kind of help out Trey McKinney?
You're talking about LJ?
I'm talking about after LJ. I'm talking about after LJ. If you're trying to manage the minutes between the two, if they're both in the starting lineup, as you're juggling and you're trying to steal 5 or 7 minutes elsewhere, where are those other 5 or 7 minutes coming from if you have to do that?
Here's the challenge. Okay, Cadeau's your guy. There's no doubt. LJ Cason is not a true point guard. And maybe they saw enough that they believe he is. I don't think he is. But maybe he's improved and you can get 8 to 10 minutes at the point. I have my doubts. I don't want Nimari Burnett as backup point guard. I saw that already. Okay. It didn't work 2 years ago. He is not a point guard. So what does Michigan do? I don't think their backup point guard is on the roster right now. Yeah. I think that they're hunting for a backup point guard. Think Devontae Jones or Mike Smith or Jalen Llewellyn, like mid-major, maybe high academic schools like from the Patriot League or the Ivy. I don't think you're going to get a Frankie Collins or a Doug McDaniel, but I do think with the NIL money that you could find somebody to come in and be a safety net. And here's why. In the middle of February, if Elliot Cadeau, somebody steps on his foot and he can't play for you, how do you think they're going to do going into Mackey Arena without a point guard?
That's a horrible.
You can't have it, Sam. It's not going to work.
That's a horrible, horrible thought. So there are no Dennis Schroeders out there, huh? For them
I don't see it. But I do think that there's somebody at a smaller school that's looking for a big stage.
Yeah.
I mentioned.
Yeah. You didn't throw that out there as they could go get one from the portal. You're right. I mean, if they have the option, if there's a guy out there that they could get, then yeah, that would be ideal. If you're telling me how you manage it from the roster, I'm definitely not doing Namari. That is my last option. That's not out of disrespect for Namari, but look at what he's become once you took that off his plate. And I just think you take so much away if you try to put that back on his plate. And it's just not worth it. I'd much rather, hey, let's see how much more LJ can handle. If we're pressed into it, I mean, let's see if some of the other guys in our mix can maybe handle some spot duty here, doing a couple of things. But I am not infringing upon Namari Burnett. When Namari Burnett at the very least, we know he's their best shooter. At the very least, I'm not messing with that.
There's a kid out there that plays at High Point or George Mason or Cornell or Princeton that says, "Are you kidding me? A Michigan degree? Sign me up for that." Yeah. And that's the kid that you want that can come in and run your offense. He can advance the ball. He's solid on defense. I remember learning from Jim Calhoun. I think I shared this with you. He always said, I need 3 really good point guards that I can trust on my team. Because if one goes down and I've only got 2, then we're not going to win. So.
Yeah, Daniel just went to Memphis. I don't know who knows where Frankie Collins is. It's like his 9th school, right? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't need Doug McDaniel. I like Doug. He did a good job. He can't play here.
I hear you. You find someone, Dusty's always looking. I said, hey, Dusty, you done in the portal? He said, you never done. He said, rosters are never done.
Hey, Sam, have you talked to Dusty about Oscar Goodman? What do you know?
Yeah, we did talk about Oscar Goodman, and he said that a guy who's really, really progressed in his time here. He thought he's a guy that is going to factor for them in the front court. Thought that he could give them some toughness and physicality up front. I want to say he mentioned some will characteristics in there. I'm trying to remember all the superlatives he offered, but he offered some similarities to some of the versatility that they get from Will with some of the things that they were seeing, in practice. Matter of fact, you know what I'll do in the next episode, because we're running long on this one, is I'll get the clip of him talking about Oscar Goodman, and we'll include it in the episode, and we'll discuss how Oscar kind of fits into this mix. So that's not something that we've discussed, and he's going to play a role. I mean, that's the benefit of him coming in early, right? So he's going to know the scheme. He's going to know the system, I should say. He's going to have familiarity with the returning players. He's going to know the lay of the land. I mean, he's going to be able to hit the ground running more so than these newcomers. And
is it 3 or a 4? 3 or 4
combo forward. Like, I think he can give you some of each. And so how does that fit in their mix?
Okay.
He
reminded me a little bit of Yusuf Kayet.
I think they expect more.
Okay.
Expect more.
I would hope so. I would hope.
I think they expect more. So, but yeah,
we'll back up, Sam.
Yeah, we'll have Dusty. We'll have Dusty give you the full breakdown on the next episode. He was very encouraged by what they. Well, you mean, obviously they recruited him for a reason, but even more encouraged once they had him on campus here this semester. Like, yeah, this is what we thought, and even better. So we'll have him on the next episode, or the clips of him talking about Oscar Goodman on the next episode, and discuss how he fits in, because I think he's going to. I think he's going to have a chance to be a real rotation player for him next year. So, a lot to still discuss, and to see if someone emerges as an option, PG wise, and to see what happens buzz wise as far as Yaxel is concerned. We'll be keeping eyes on that, keeping eyes on the mock drafts. Have you seen Yaxel pop up on any mock drafts? Tim, do you keep track of that kind of thing?
I think right now that you would expect the high end is 25 and the low end is somewhere in the 40s.
Yeah, I saw him on the Hoops Hype. Last one I saw, Hoops Hype had him at like number 27 in the first round. So,
and you know what that means? Nothing.
you're
Those are guys that are sitting in their mom's basement writing up mock drafts. So I wouldn't worry about that one.
Okay. All right. So we'll see how it goes here in the coming days and weeks. Always fun here on the Basketball Insider. Tim, you care to give me a call on the Sunday game, Pistons-Knicks?
Yeah, I think the Pistons win. I think this series will go 6. And Cade Cunningham looks sad. I would be sad too when you've got all these double and triple teams every time you try to do anything. Just like Michigan last year with Namari Burnett and Roddy Gale, we can't have those kind of games from Malik Beasley. He's got to get on fire because they desperately needed him. If he shoots well, if Tobias Harris doesn't get in foul trouble last night, they win that game.
Yeah. Well enough. True enough. All right, Tim, as always, great stuff. To the rest of you, we'll see you on the next edition of the Michigan Basketball Insider.